Hello and welcome to Module 18 of our Small Business Certified AI Strategist program. At this stage, you've shaped a comprehensive AI roadmap, complete with timelines, budgets, and ROI projections. Today, we're going to focus on presenting that roadmap to leadership and stakeholders in an interactive session where each proposed initiative will be vetoed or approved on the spot if they're ready to do so. So in this module, we'll cover several aspects. First, we're going to cover how to prepare for an interactive roadmap presentation, where we are going to be referencing the initial meeting notes and focusing on any pain points discovered during that sales process. We'll be walking through each AI initiative, showing how it maps to budgets, timelines, and the ROI. We will have a budget breakdown where we are clarifying line items for development, implementation, licensing, and more. And then we'll be securing that veto or the approval on the spot, encouraging stakeholders to make real-time decisions if they're ready to. And then we'll be explaining ROI numbers, ensuring that we can detail each projected ROI. And then finally, we want to set expectations for our final next steps, where we will get confirmation of sign-off, scheduling follow-up sessions, and moving towards execution. So let's dive in. When you schedule the AI roadmap, you want to make sure that you schedule this with the proper stakeholders. This might be just the executive team. It might be the executive team and the entire leadership team. However, I would recommend scheduling this meeting with the core individuals that have the approval power or the authority to be able to veto the actual ideas. You don't want to bring individuals in who are going to ask tons of questions or rip apart the methodologies that you are suggesting, because that could derail the progress of explaining each aspect of the AI roadmap that you put together. So when you get all these individuals on a call, the call will typically be about 2 hours, and you want to open with a brief, light-hearted anecdote or icebreaker that will align with the company's culture. Additionally, you want to make sure that this meeting is also recorded. So the first thing that you want to do after you start with the icebreaker, you know that the meeting's recorded, you want to recap any of the pain points. You want to remind them of the pain points that you were able to derive from the initial meeting notes that had revealed any recurring challenges, such as invoice processing bottlenecks or manual data entry pain. And then you want to state the goal for the day. And the goal is to validate and potentially approve or veto each AI initiative. And then you'll want to go over the meeting structure. And I'll provide you with an actual template that I use to lead these types of discussions. But you want to go over the meeting structure and emphasize that you'll show each tool's budget, timeline, and projected ROI. And you want to invite them for any immediate feedback and questions. So you want to make this as interactive as possible, but your goal is to secure that yay or that nay on the spot. So at this point, your client, as they've come to this meeting, they have reviewed the AI roadmap at some level of detail. Some individuals will just have opened it once and looked at the budgets tab. Some individuals will have gone into each of the individual AI tools, but there will be some level of appreciation of the work that you put in, because they realize that you have delivered a multi-100-page plan for their organization that's tailored to their organization. So there's going to be a certain level of respect that they bring into the meeting for the initial deliverables. So at this stage, you want to reassure stakeholders that this roadmap, even though you've spent a lot of time and your team has spent a lot of time building out this roadmap, it still remains adaptable. You're going to be flexible until their leadership formally approves each individual initiative. You need to stress that you're not going to be upset if they nix one of the ideas. If they say, yeah, that's not a priority, that's not important, give them that power to do that and let them know that you're not going to argue with them and you're not going to be upset, even though you have put a lot of effort into it. Now, if someone sees a tool that doesn't address a real pain point, or they disagree with how painful that pain point is, it happens. Then allow them or express to them that they can suggest removing it or reprioritizing it. So what we want to do is, for each initiative, we want to explain each of the line items for every tool that we outline. We want to make sure that we review the budgetary items, the development costs, the implementation costs, the licensing costs, the maintenance costs, the infrastructure. We also want to let them know that these budgetary numbers, they're not quotes, they are budgetary numbers. This is a line item that they should expect for the next year. So this isn't a quotation. This is you setting a standard and setting an expectation that says, hey, in January of this year, if we move forward with this plan, you need to expect to pay $80,000. That should be our budget. And budgets are there not to spend all of, budgets are there to set an expectation and for us to know that that's the ceiling. This is the number that we anticipate spending on our AI stack in January of next year. So this level of transparency for budgeting and clear budgeting, it really builds trust, especially when stakeholders see what is the difference between the development budget and the implementation budget. They feel more confident endorsing that solution when they see that level of transparency. Now, I know I said that the budget is a budget and you need to stress that it's a budget. One of the items that you'll need to call out during this stage is the actual implementation budget. You need to let them know that this is your fee. If they decide to move forward with you, if they decide to work with you to handle the implementation, this is what your fee would be in order to handle the onboarding, the training, the management, and the quarterly business reviews and measuring the KPIs and so on. This is what your fee would be to handle that process on an ongoing basis. So at this stage, there might be questions about the implementation. Typically, there's an appreciation for the current deliverable. So there wouldn't be a lot of pushback around those numbers. Near the end of the presentation, when you start discussing next steps, that's when we start to get into a new scope of work. When we start talking about rolling this into an implementation scope of work where this is no longer project-based, we are moving towards implementation phase. So after you review the high-level budgetary items, you want to offer a succinct recap of your road mapping process where you had a discovery process that involved workshops, stakeholder interviews, and then also review the initial pain points that you gathered from the sales process. Then you want to get into the scoring and prioritization methodologies and explain the uses of the MICE and robust scores that were their homework that spotlighted the most impactful and easiest to implement AI solutions. And then you want to explain the projected value. You want to summarize the cost savings, the new revenue opportunities, or the intangible benefits like a 20% time saved for this particular process or a 12-month payback period for the entire AI stack. So you want to give a high-level view of the payback period or the projected value for the AI stack as a whole as it stands. And then you want to, again, reiterate the purpose of the budgets. Note that this is a total estimated investment per tool and the total cost of ownership, clarifying each cost category. So you want to stress that the budget is a budget, it's not a quote. Once you finish the high level aspect of things, and you can follow along in the actual presentation document that I provide that you can download, you want to start digging into each of the proposed solutions, and each of the proposed solutions will follow the same format. First, you want to walk through each wish statement that corresponds with that AI solution. And for each, you want to review the budget breakdown. You want to review how the development, the implementation, the licensing, the maintenance, and the infrastructure costs add up for each AI tool. You also want to explain at a high level the features and the benefits of the AI tool that you've identified. Then you want to review any timeline. So indicate the proposed start and launch dates and reference a Gantt chart if available. And then you want to offer up any Q&A or decision to be made after every single AI tool that you're reviewing. You want to try to encourage stakeholders to either veto or approve each individual tool as you're reviewing it and record that decision. Now, you'll know if these individuals need more information or if they're not clear on the value or if they're not clear how this can be implemented. Typically at this stage, the confusion that will appear will realistically surround whether or not this is a problem. This is where you'll see a disconnect between the executive leadership and the management teams, where executive leadership, they might minimize a thing that is a pain point for management. Management might say, this thing here I hate doing. I wish we could automate it. It would save us $20 million a year if we could do that. Management might look at that and say, that takes that person 15 minutes a day. We need to follow up with that because I don't think that's a problem. So the discrepancies that will exist at that tool level will be kind of a misunderstanding of what does it take to actually execute that job, or is that opportunity an actual opportunity? So this is where you're going to see that misalignment, and you will have more follow-ups that will be needed to either say yay or nay to that particular initiative. If anyone challenges any of the ROI numbers, which might happen, just be prepared to explain how you arrived at those figures. And you want to be able to not only point at your value analysis details, but you want to be able to dig into the actual baseline labor costs, the projected throughput gains, and so on, and explain how you arrived at those figures. Now, there might be upwards of 20 tools that you're looking at rolling out for this business in this business's AI roadmap. So you're going to iterate through that exact same process 20 different times. So you're potentially going to review 20 different workflows, 20 different start dates, 20 different ROI payback period, and so on. So it can get a little redundant, and you're trying to get 20 vetoes, yays or nays, for each one of these AI tools. Now, at the very end, what you'll want to do is zoom out a little bit and show the Gantt chart. You'll want to show that Gantt chart so they can get an understanding of the rollout and the work that's going to be involved in managing this entire new arm of the business, or the new initiatives that are in the business. And at this point, stakeholders, they're wondering who actually builds or integrates this, because I'm already slipping in my own sweat. I'm already busy. I got too much to do. So this is where you will fortify the need for you to handle, or your agency to handle, implementation. And what implementation involves is it involves you rolling out each of these AI tools, making sure that it's on schedule, any staff training to make sure that the tools are actually used, any project management, because if there are third-party engineers that are building out these tools, like working with Strata 52 engineers, or anybody from Fiverr or Upwork, or an engineering agency that the client has worked with in the past, you'll be the one who is the intermediary for that. And then coordinating any supplementary consulting work to make sure that these AI tools are actually adopted and used and benefited from. You'll also want to review your role. So what would you be doing when it comes to handling the implementation? Are you handling the end-to-end deployment? Are you going to be responsible for that, including the coding? Or are you just providing managerial oversight, which is going to be 99% of the case, where you will be the one who's handling the actual strategic oversight? And then also with vendor partnerships, you will be responsible for any vendor partnerships. So if there are any external tools involved, you'll need to clarify any shared responsibilities at like onboarding vendors, giving vendors any updates, doing any vendor data migrations, and so on. And then finally, when it comes to implementation and management, you will be the individual who is tracking, measuring, and monitoring the KPIs that you identified. So you want to make sure that you stress how important it is that you and your team are actually monitoring and measuring the KPIs that you've identified to make sure that the business does get the value that you anticipate from each one of these AI tools. At this stage, after you've reviewed the Gantt chart, you've reviewed the arduous work that goes into implementation, you want to summarize the progress and today's outcomes. At this point during the presentation, you want to recap, where you list each initiative and its corresponding pain point or user wish statement, just as an overview. And then you also want to review any decisions that were made. So let everybody know that you've recorded that you are vetoing this tool, and this tool, and these other tools are the ones that have been already approved. And then you want to make sure that there is a next step. The next step is for ongoing approval. So there might be a little bit of discussion that needs to be had among the business that you're working with. They might want to have a private discussion where they decide which tools do they want to work with. The amount of tools that are being rolled out will likely dictate and affect the implementation budget that you've put in place. So At this point, you want to make sure that you have summarized everything that you've reviewed, and then you want to close out the presentation by establishing dates for your final approvals and next steps. Those dates are the decision deadlines. If certain stakeholders need more info or ROI or budget line items, propose a time frame for them to respond. Second, you want to have a kickoff meeting established. So that's the second deadline. So you want to have a decision deadline, and you also want to have a kickoff meeting deadline. So this kickoff meeting deadline is the actual kickoff of the plan. You want to establish that, hey, it's the end of December, and we want to kick this plan off on January 15th. So our decision deadline is January 10th. If we're going to be kicking this off on January 15th, we need to make sure we have that decision deadline completed. So if certain tools are fully greenlit, so let's say they've said, okay, well, let's go ahead and start with the ChatGPT marketing GPT integration on January 15th. We'll go ahead and kick that off. Perfect. Then you can go ahead and commit to that date. Additionally, you'll need to set the expectation to the client that you're closing out the road mapping engagement, the road mapping scope of work, and you're likely going to be moving into a new scope of work. This scope of work is implementation and management, which will require you to draft a new scope of work and for you to confirm resource availability, resources in the sense that if you have a team that will be working on this, and resources in the sense of budget, are they willing and able to afford your services to actually see through the strategic AI roadmap? Now, at this point, you'll have a feeling, you'll know. There will be phrases that you're going to hear where individuals will be saying, well, when you do implementation, when you're doing this, and you're going to be handling that, right? You're going to hear those key words, which is going to be your trigger for, yeah, these guys are going to move forward with implementation. They're going to have us move into that next phase of the engagement, which is really what we're looking for as an agency, moving into the next phase of an engagement. So just make sure that you are not going out and creating scopes of work without those signals. You're going to have to ask, are we going to be handling the implementation? How does this number look? You're going to have to ask questions like that, and they're going to be really important so that way you don't waste time creating scopes of work that people either don't respond to or people are surprised by. So finally, once we have the decision deadline, we have the kickoff meeting, we've stated that you're going to be putting together a scope of work, you need to let everybody know that the purpose of the AI roadmap and the purpose of this presentation is to get final sign-off on the AI roadmap, because this is a commitment. It's a commitment by the organization to stick to this roadmap that you've put together, because that's what you're intending to oversee. And they're going to agree to the ROI payback, because that's what you're going to be working towards. You're going to be making sure that you report on these KPIs. You're going to make sure that that's what you're paying attention to as it relates to the success or the failure of each one of these AI tools. So the purpose at this phase is not just to set a deadline, a time-bound deadline for a decision on each of these AI tools and for a kickoff meeting. And so that way you can move into the scope of work. The purpose of this phase is for everybody to get on the same page and agree that this is the plan that we're moving forward with. We all agree that these are the KPIs. This is the ROI payback. And here's the tools that have been approved. And we're all in lockstep with this plan. You need to make sure that you have buy-in from the organization, the leaders at the organization, because they're going to become your internal champions, because they're the ones who want to receive the value from the work that you're going to be putting into the business. So as you might have guessed, that wraps up Module 18, the AI Roadmap presentation. And remember, I have an example presentation that you can review. So please feel free to use that template and modify it to your liking for your own roadmap presentation when you get to that point. The roadmap presentation module, we learned how to leverage initial meeting notes to focus our presentation on the pain points that shaped each AI initiative, how to encourage real-time decisions, how to encourage these individuals to either veto or approve each one of the AI initiatives in real time, while clarifying every budget category, the development, the implementation, the licensing, maintenance, and infrastructure. And you learned how important it is to Be ready to explain in detail the ROI for each AI tool and why those KPIs are important, pointing to your value analysis for baseline data and assumptions. And then you also learned how to end with clear next steps where you want deadlines for the actual decision of the AI roadmap or the actual tools that you're going to be rolling out for the next 12 months. And then also for the scheduling of the scope of work drafting session, where you're going to be drafting a scope of work for the next phase of the engagement, which is ongoing engagement for your agency that involves management and implementation of the AI stack. So next up in Module 19, we're going to talk about guiding final approvals, navigating governance processes, and ensuring no loose ends remain. So if you can plow through another one, let's get started with Module 19.